want you to understand something before I tell you this. I never gave him my address. I never told him what street I lived on, what town, what alley. I gave him nothing. He found me anyway. It started the way these things always do, quietly, innocently. October of last year. I was single, I downloaded Tinder, and within a few swipes I matched with someone named Killian. He was charming at first. We talked every single day. He said he was stationed at a military base not far from where I lived. A few weeks in, something shifted. He started saying things like, "You're mine. If I can't have you, no one can. If you block me, I'll kill you." We had never even been on a date. In December, he unfriended me on Snapchat. I told myself it was over. I moved on. I breathed again. Then, 8 weeks later, he came back. He added me again. And I, remembering what he'd said, accepted. Because I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. He sent me a message that said he'd been thinking about my smile for 8 weeks. That he kept wondering what we could be if he didn't let his dark thoughts win. I replied, "That's cute." I said it to keep him calm. I was terrified of him. He started acting like a boyfriend I'd never agreed to have, asking where I was, who I was with, why I was out, demanding I turn on my Snapchat location so he could make sure I was safe. I didn't turn it on. I kept telling myself I was handling it. Then came a Thursday night. I'd been out with a friend until 1 in the morning. He dropped me at home. We said goodbye at the corner, and I walked up the alleyway toward my house. There was a man standing there. I didn't think much of it at first. I kept walking. Then he said my name. I stopped, asked who was there. He stepped into the light. My heart stopped. My body went cold. My hands started shaking before my mind had even fully processed what I was seeing. It was Killian. He grabbed me by the throat and slammed my head into the wall. He stood over me, studying my face, asking who I'd been with, why I was out so late. Was it a man? His hand tightened around my throat while he spoke. I couldn't breathe. I could feel my eyes filling with tears, not from sadness, from the pressure. My body was begging for air. He threw me to the ground, head first. I lay on the wet pavement, gasping, looking up at him. His eyes were empty, completely empty. He didn't wince. He didn't hesitate. There was nothing there. He sat on top of me and hit me across the face. Then he started choking me again. I looked up at the black sky and I thought, this is it. I started thinking about my dog who had passed. I felt myself beginning to fade. And then he stopped. Not because something in him changed, not out of mercy. Because he said, "I have to go. The last bus leaves in 3 minutes." He ran. I lay on the cold ground trying to remember how to breathe. I called my best friend. I couldn't speak. My throat had been damaged so badly that no sound came out. Just strange, broken noises. He heard them and said he was on his way. When I got to his house, I fell asleep on the couch in under 3 minutes. While I slept, he called the police. The next day, after I gave my statement, they told me my life was in enough danger that they couldn't simply let me leave. They gave me a tracking device with an emergency button. One press and officers would know exactly where I was. 3 days later, I was followed by someone connected to Killian. The police told me his intention had been to kill me. If the last bus had run 10 minutes later, I wouldn't be here to tell you this. I still go outside. I have to. But every time I step out of my front door, I feel it. The sense that somewhere, just out of sight, he's watching. He told me he always would be. I'm sharing this because I want someone to know, in case one day I don't come home. I never gave him my address. I gave him nothing. He found me anyway. I need to tell you about a night I spent in the Smoky Mountains, and the thing I understood when morning finally came. My name is Mike. Last October, I drove alone into the mountains for a few days of quiet. I'd done solo trips before. I wasn't afraid of being alone in the woods. That feels important to say now. I wasn't someone who scared easily. A couple hours from the park, I stopped at a roadside diner. Nearly empty, a few locals nursing coffee, a waitress who looked like she'd been there since the place was built. I sat at the counter and ordered a burger. There was a man a few stools down. He never fully turned to look at me, but I caught him glancing over more than once. After a while, he asked where I was headed. I told him, camping up in the mountains. He nodded slowly and said, "Be careful out there." I asked what he meant. "It gets real quiet out there at night," he said. Then he looked back at his coffee. I paid and left. I didn't think about it again until I was deep in the dark, listening to things I couldn't explain. By the time I found a clearing and got my tent up, the light was nearly gone. I built a small fire, made some s'mores, let myself relax into the sounds of the woods, bugs, wind, branches. Then a sound that didn't belong. Footsteps. On leaves. Human footsteps. I looked up. A man was standing at the tree line 30 or 40 feet away. Just standing there, facing me, still. I called out and asked if he was all right. He stepped closer, into the edge of the firelight. He said one word. "Hello." I asked if he was camping nearby. He asked if I was out there alone. Something dropped in my stomach. I hesitated, then told him my friends were meeting me soon. A lie. I had nothing to defend myself with, and I knew it. He nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked back into the dark. I watched him go, watched him blend into the trees until I could barely see him. And just before he disappeared completely, he stopped and turned back toward the fire. He stood there facing me for what felt like several minutes. He seemed to think the darkness had swallowed him. It hadn't. I could still see his outline. Eventually, he was gone. I sat by that fire for another 30 minutes, listening. Then I put it out and climbed into my tent. I told myself I was overreacting. About an hour later, the footsteps came back. This time they moved around my campsite in a slow circle, around and around the tent. Then they stopped, right outside the fabric. Silence. I held my breath without deciding to. Then I heard it. A slow exhale. A man standing right outside my tent, breathing quietly in the dark. Every instinct I had screamed at me, "Do not move. Do not let him know you're awake." So I lay completely still. After a long time, the footsteps moved away. I waited, forced myself to breathe. 10 minutes later, they came back. This went on for hours. The circling, the stopping, the silence. Sometimes the steps would fade far into the woods and I'd think it was over. Then they'd return. And somewhere in the dark hours of that night, I started to feel, though I couldn't explain why, that it wasn't just one person anymore. The footsteps didn't always sound the same. I told myself it was fear. I told myself a lot of things that night. Dawn came slowly. When there was just enough grey light to see by, I unzipped my tent and stepped outside. Immediately, footsteps. Multiple sets. Running. Not one person. Several moving fast through the leaves, away from me in different directions. I couldn't see them, but I heard them. And in that moment I knew. I hadn't imagined a single second of it. I grabbed what I could carry and jogged back to my car, locked the doors, sat there until I fell asleep from exhaustion, woke up hours later with the sun high overhead. I tried to rationalize. Maybe it was other campers. Maybe they were harmless. I decided to go back for the gear I'd left behind. When I reached the clearing, I stopped. My tent was gone. My sleeping bag was gone. My cooking supplies, gone. Every single thing I had left behind, taken. The only evidence I had ever been there was a black circle of ash where the fire had been. No mess, no damage, just empty ground. Like I had never existed there at all. I turned around and walked back to my car without looking behind me. I drove straight home and haven't camped alone since. But sometimes, late at night, I still think about it. Not about the footsteps or the circling or the breathing just outside the tent. I think about how many of them there were and how close they were standing to me, in the dark, in the quiet, while I lay there pretending to sleep.